Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton. But where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and no prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as Who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We try to educate you on finance, on economics, have good discussions about politics. My next guest is a superhero to me, a guy who I've known for 35 years or so. I'm talking about Senator Phil Gramm from the great state of Texas, who was a superstar, obviously, when he was in the House and the Senate. He was one of the lead authors of the Reagan tax cuts in 1981. He was also one of the guys who actually tried to cut government spending. He did the Gramm-Rudman bill, which actually brought the budget deficit down, and just had made so many contributions to Washington. So, Phil Gramm, thanks so much for joining.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
So I got a lot to talk to you about and only 10 minutes to talk to you about it, Phil. So I want to get it right down to it. By the way, when you first came to Washington, I had forgotten about this. You were a Democrat. What were you thinking?
Yeah. Well, no, it was the Civil War.
Right.
No, there weren't any Republicans. There was not a single elected Republican in my district. I didn't think party mattered.
Yeah.
I thought values mattered. But when I got to Washington, I discovered I was about the only person who thought that way. And when I was the author of the Reagan program,
yes,
the Democrats threw me off the budget committee, and I could have just changed parties, but I felt people back in my district deserved a chance to say yes or no. So I resigned from Congress and ran again as a Republican.
And I'm only kind of half kidding you because back then there were conservative Democrats back then. People forget about that. Yeah. And so it's, by the way, why do you think it is that the Democrats have strayed so far to the radical left over the last 30 years?
Well, I don't know, to tell you the truth. I think our biggest problem politically is that the two parties now are so far apart.
Right.
It's hard to find any constructive center.
Right. It's true. And I don't think it hardly exists at all today. Although I thought it was interesting that Donald Trump, who's a pretty strong conservative, and Zohran Mamdani got together at the White House yesterday. That was an interesting press conference. But I agree with you. I mean, when I first came to Washington, I worked very closely with a lot of Democrats, the Sam Nunns of the world, and even the Dick Gephardts of the world, and there were a lot of them who. And you, by the way, were involved in the Reagan tax cut in 1986. Senator, and you may recall that bill to cut the highest income tax rate to 28%, that passed, I think, like 97-3 in the Senate. I don't think I've ever remembered anything passing 97-3.
Well, it was in many ways a bipartisan effort to strip out all the special interest deductions,
right.
Lower rates. And it was probably the most efficient tax reform we've ever had in America.
I agree.
I wish we could go back to it.
Me too. Okay, so let's get to your book, because I love this book. I know it's going to win a lot of awards. That just came out not long ago by Phil Gramm and Don Boudreaux at George Mason University. And it's The Triumph of Economic Freedom. and it's the subtitle. It's The Triumph of Economic Freedom, and the subtitle is Debunking the 7 Great Myths of American Capitalism. We've got 7 minutes to debunk 7 myths, Senator. So let's start with the first couple of them.
Well, first of all, the book really addresses the fact that when you find Americans that have very different views about the role of government in a free society,
right?
If you probe, you will find that they have very different interpretations of 5 important historic periods in American history: the Industrial Revolution, Progressive Era regulation, what caused the Depression, different views about trade in the post-war period, very different views about what caused the financial crisis, and then the 2 contemporary issues of poverty and inequality.
Right.
So when they say he who writes history determines the future, they determine the future by sort of grinding the lens through which we see the world.
Right.
And what the book does simply is it takes the 5 historic periods and the 2 current issues, and it states the undisputed facts, and then it states what we call the myth. And normally that myth quotes the best-selling high school history book, the best-selling college history book, and a slew of experts and factual presentations in presenting the myth. Right. And then we set about with logic and facts.
So let's go through. Let's go. Okay. So like what, just give me 2 or 3 of some of the most important myths.
Okay. Yeah. The Industrial Revolution. If you read American history or British history,
right,
almost all the writing about the Industrial Revolution is about how terrible it was.
That was ridiculous.
If you go to the National Portrait Gallery in Washington D.C., and you go into the room with the portraits of all the industrial giants,
right,
there's an economic journalist picture in there, Henry George, and he gives the following assessment of the Industrial Revolution. In the Industrial Revolution, the rich got richer, the poor grew helpless, and the middle class were blown away. And yet, in the Industrial Revolution in America, working people never saw their well-being grow faster and improve more in any period where people have ever breathed a breath of life on this planet. So how did this happen? Same thing in Britain.
Yes.
Yes. And what happened is that economic growth, in this case, the Industrial Revolution, is a wave of creative destruction. The creation is the new world we live in, and the world that changed dramatically for the better in America in 30 years, in Britain in 60 years. But the destruction is it destroyed the old feudal system. It destroyed the old cottage industries, and it meant dramatic change. And those were the people who controlled the parliament, controlled Congress, and who wrote the history of the period. And this is so important, Steve, because we're getting ready to replay this history with AI. We're going to have.
You know what? I was just thinking about that. I was just thinking about AI and listening to you describe this situation. By the way, Senator, we got to take a quick break. Can I hold you over for one more segment?
Oh yeah, sure you can. Yeah.
Okay. This is Steve Moore. Phil Gramm, one of the great senators, one of the great free marketeers of all time, is explaining us the economy. We should be paying him tuition. We'll be right back with my discussion with the great Senator Phil. We are back, folks, with the great Senator Phil Gramm of Texas, who served, I don't know, how long were you? I think the senator was in Congress about
25 years. Roughly.
25 years. You did your time, Senator. But anyway, we're having a great discussion about his new book, The Triumph of Economic Freedom, which is absolutely fantastic book. It should be read by every high school and college student in America and around the world. And something you were talking about before the break was this idiotic notion that the Industrial Revolution only benefited rich people. I was looking at a chart that I think it's in your book, but I've seen it in other places too, that shows from about the birth of Christ through around 1800. There was almost no progress in incomes. And then we have the Industrial Revolution, and it just goes straight up. And I'm not talking about for rich people. We're talking about for working class people, the things that they could afford boom because of that productivity revolution. And yet nobody learns about that.
Well, for 1,000 years, people lived pretty much like their grandparents.
Right.
And then first in Britain, and then in America, and then Western Europe, and all over the world, the Industrial Revolution caused per capita income to explode. And what is miraculous about it is the process has never ended. The growth has never stopped.
Right.
And yet we have all these people saying that AI, by making the system more efficient, is going to destroy jobs. We've got Senator Sanders who's proposing to tax the result of AI with robots because they're going to put people out of work. Well, in the Industrial Revolution, which was far more dramatic than I can imagine AI to be, we doubled the number of jobs in America in 30 years, and real wages went up 30 years, doubled in 30 years.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you're precisely right about that. It's something most people don't get to. I wanted to ask you another myth that you talk a little bit about, and it's something near and dear to my heart in terms of the misinformation that is, and that is the idea of the robber barons. And you've heard this many times, that the people like Henry Ford and Rockefeller and all the people who built this country were Carnegie and J.P. Morgan. They were. The history book says they're villains.
Yeah, look, the progressives were so obsessed with the fact that in 1892 there were 4,050 millionaires in America.
Right.
That they titled the whole era the Gilded Age.
Right.
And they turned a totally blind eye to 66 million Americans who saw their well-being grow more rapidly than any other people who had ever walked the face of the earth.
Amazing.
And this set off the progressive era regulation that big was bad. And what had happened is, with the railroads, with communications, we now had a nationwide market. So you had producers like the Chicago stockyards that made beef cheaper, improved the quality of it.
Right.
And we set off a period where for 90 years the government intervened in the marketplace, basically protecting inefficient producers, hurting consumers, and finally between 70 and 1982, we overturned those regulations, first under Carter and then under President Reagan. And in doing so, our transportation system became the most efficient in the world, and we unleashed communications that has created the world that we live in today.
Well, if you look at that era, that you were talking about, when we had, it was really, a little bit after the Industrial Revolution, but when we had the, modern, era of automobiles and, steel production and the railroads and financial services. One of the things that I learned from your book is that the cost of those things fell. In other words, if they're robber barons, you'd expect that their prices went up, but they went down.
Well, and they fell, production grew faster and prices went down faster before the Sherman Act, 20 years before, than it did 20 years after the Sherman Act.
Yeah. By the way, I think the Sherman Act was one of the worst bills we ever passed. That's exactly right. It produced monopolies, and we got rid of it. And now the first Biden tried to bring it back, and we actually had debate in the Senate about regulating companies based on what they might do that's anti-competitive.
an incipiency standard where if you might do something wrong, we're going to regulate you.
Yeah. So we only have 2 minutes left, and I want to ask you one question on the way out. It's something that so many of my listeners ask me week after week after week. Why is it that we have young people today in the year 2025 who think socialism is the route to prosperity?
I think part of it is their education.
Yes.
That they don't get the facts straight. Part of it is it seems so easy to say, let government fix it.
Right.
And markets work and they benefit everybody, but they're hard for people to understand.
Boy, is that true. And I think
somebody comes along and says, I'm going to deal with the affordability problem. Well, how are you going to do it? Well, I'm going to put in price controls. Well, on rents. Well, what that's going to do is you're going to get no housing.
I know, exactly. Right.
And you're going to let government open grocery stores, which will drive out private providers. Right. And when somebody's working in a government grocery store, how efficient or pleasant do you think they're going to be? And how vigilant are they going to be about shoplifting? The whole thing's going to be a disaster. But maybe you have to, every generation or so, you have to do stupid things so people get hit upside the head with a 2x4 and learn something.
Yeah, I hope that's not true.
Over and over.
But it's going to be painful for people. And, New York is our most important city, and I hate to see it go down the drain.
It's the cradle of American capitalism.
There you go. So, Senator, we've got to take our break. I appreciate so much your coming on your show. I'd love to have you on again in the future because you educate our audience. That is the great Senator Phil Gramm. The book is The Triumph of Economic Freedom. Everyone should get that book. I was just looking on Kindle. You can get it for $14. That's a pretty good bargain. Thank you again, Senator.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Wishing you a very happy half-off holiday because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day. Yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.